Good morning, and just welcome. I'm out in the back, and I guess the neighborhood dogs are awake at our house, and back behind me it's too dark to see, but we've got our peaches. Let's see, peaches and plums and apricots and tomatoes and two or three kinds of tomatoes, two or three kinds of squash, an orange tree, a couple of orange trees, and a lime tree, and I think plants are a good thing. And they're a good, some of you are too busy to mess with it, and I probably am too, but sometimes it's good for me to shut my brain off and get to mess with some things like that. I'll be in Psalms chapter 16 in a minute, and maybe Psalm chapter 1 as well. But today, if you would think of it, I want to encourage you to pray for our son and his wife, Josiah and Ruth Ann. And they've had a few meetings. They're on deputation. They're raising support to go to Trinidad as missionaries. And they've had a meeting here or there, but this is kind of the first official. We're on the road heading out, and they're leaving. And this morning for, I think, going to Arizona, and then they're going to be in Missouri, and then they're going to work their way. By the end of May, they'll be in the East Coast, the Carolinas, New York, and up and down there. So if you think to pray for them, and I just ask God's blessing. We've also got Nate and Marissa Patton. Nate Patton grew up at our church and married a young lady he met in Bible college. And the two of them, I think they've got their support raised or very close. And so they're headed to the Philippines. Josiah and Ruth Ann are really just starting their deputation. And their plan is to go to Trinidad, just right off the coast of Venezuela, just a few miles off the coast, the independent country, Tobago and Trinidad and Tobago, two islands. And they're going to be working with one of our missionaries, Brother Hoffmeister, and he's been there many, many years and has a great work. But if you think to pray for them, that'd be good as they travel, and having a 2-month-old baby in the back seat of a car for 6 months and or longer. They're thinking they'll be back here on the West Coast by the fall, and so we think to pray for them. And I was just going to take a minute or two this morning and mention a couple things, just a few thoughts about where we are in our church history. 40 years. 40 years ago, July. So here we are. This is just about May. And this next couple of days should be May 1st, and it was July, and I'm thinking early July. I'm terrible with dates, and I don't keep records. But my wife and I drove from Indiana to California. In these morning moments during the next few weeks, I'll share some memories and some thoughts. And I'd like to invite you, by the way, to be a part of any of our anniversary activities. If you are on our mailing list, you would have gotten a August brochure, just everything that's going on. If you didn't get one of those, you can go to our website, and either it is or it will be up there, the calendar of events for August, but also we will mail you one if you get a hold of us and get you on our mailing list. But the first Monday, I don't have a calendar in front of me. Monday, there's I believe it's the second Monday and Tuesday of August. Dr. Bob Gray Sr. will be with us, and he'll be preaching on soul winning in the Sunday school ministry. And then that weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we're going to have a big day of soul winning every day, and then Sunday, big day on the property here. And then the following weekend, Saturday and Sunday, we're having a big picnic just to celebrate our 40th year together. And Kevin Walker and his wife Loretta are going to be with us. And what a pleasure those two are. They've been great friends to us all these years, as Brother Gray has. And we're very, very much, we love Brother Gray. His soul-winning passion, his passion for the old-time gospel. We are unashamedly old-fashioned Baptists, Bible-believing Baptists with standards and convictions, and we are not ashamed. We're not changing. And but that weekend, just to be an enjoyable weekend, a fun Saturday will be a party, Sunday will be a great enjoyable day, and we'll have some special things. Then the Monday and Tuesday following, Alan Domley will be with us, and Alan Domley is going to be preaching on who we are. Brother Gray's preaching on what we do, Sunday school and soul winning. Brother Domley's preaching on who we are. We're Baptists. We're separated. We're a peculiar people. And Brother Donnelly's been a dear friend. He was in evangelism for, I want to say, 25 years. And he stayed true to the Lord all these years, and now pastoring in Bethany, Oklahoma, right outside Oklahoma City. He's going to be with us. We've got other plans during the month of August for our 40th anniversary. But just a quick word or two. In July, my wife and I took off from Indiana, drove an old beat-up car that we had no business driving across the country. We got as far as Iowa, which was just a day's drive. And my uncle there, we stopped by and spent the day, and he said, I wouldn't drive that car across Des Moines, let alone across the country. But we drove it across the country. Had one breakdown, had a radiator hose break, but knowing the car I had fan belts and a radiator hoses in the trunk with some water, and we pulled into a rest stop and got out of the car, relaxed, let the car cool off. I changed the radiator hose, poured some water in it, and got back in, and that was our rest stop, and that was the only trouble we had. And we got to Redding, California. That's basically where we're from. My wife's parents lived there, and we spent a little time there, a few days, and I took a Greyhound bus 700 miles south to where my brother lived in Vista, just an hour and a half south of us here in Wildomar. And he had an extra car he loaned me. And I drove for the first time into Riverside County. I'd never been in the county before. Drove into the town of I guess, Temecula first. And Temecula at that time had 10,000 people. Murrieta had 1,000. Wildomar had 1,000. Lake Elsinore had about 10,000. So about 22,000 people in the whole valley. And I spent a few days just driving and praying. I don't remember where I stayed. I have no idea where I slept. I don't know, it's a blur, but I remember driving, and I remember certain places I drove, and I had a map, and I'd prayed over that map, and I remember driving and praying, and I ended up going back down to Vista to get my brother's car back to him, and got on the Greyhound and drove it back up to Redding area, the nearby where my in-laws lived. My wife was with them, and she had our old beat-up car, and I remember on the phone, I'd called her pay phones, of course, no cell phones in those days. And I remember calling her up from here and looking out over this barren valley, just a barren valley. And she said, are there mountains there? Now, where we grew up, there were mountains, I mean big mountains, and snow on the mountain year-round. Some of those higher peaks, Shasta and Lassen, always had snow on them. And there's a Trinity wilderness area, the Trinity Alps. They had snow, they had glaciers on them. And that's halfway between Redding and the coast, I guess, kind of a triangle from the Oregon border down to Redding and over toward the coast. But we'd backpack up there and swam in lakes that had glaciers going down into the water. And our mountains are beautiful. Deer and lion and bear and bobcats and every kind of wild animal and salmon in the streams. And she says, and picture of you that know what our area looks like. Our area is rough and barren, just a rolling desert with some dirt thrown in. And she said, are there mountains? And I'm looking around and I said, well, yeah, sort of. And later, when we both got here, she said, there's the mountains. Where are the trees? And of course, there's not a lot here vegetation-wise unless we plant it. But went up to Redding. And again, I don't know the timing. Was there a few days, I'm guessing. And took off everything we owned in the back of that little 68 Chevy Impala and drove into Wildomar and started praying, found a place to meet an older gentleman. He's in heaven now, he and his wife, Hank and Marge Booniger. He was a cobbler. Literally, he made shoes. Now, he'd fix shoes, and he'd put new cowboy boot heels on and things like that. But he was a cobbler, and I remember we did some work for him, shined shoes, dyed shoes. My wife and I'd sit in his basement at night and make cowboy boot heels. And he showed us how out of scrap leather we got for free from Bianchi Leather. And we had all the dyes and cut the heel leather, and then from the smaller to the larger, and glue them together, nail them together, and then grind them down to the right shape, and then all that work, and then sold them for $20 a pair. And I think I don't know how much money we made on them, not much, but we were here, and I just picked up. We just came here believing that God was good and God was faithful, believing that God would take care of us and get us where we wanted to be, and get a church started. And so we were here, and Hank Booniger, this older gentleman, and a godly old Christian man, and I was going to start the church in Lake Elsinore, 10,000 people. It's still a small town to start a church, and there were a couple of Baptist churches there already. And he said, you need to start the church in Wildomar. I said, Wildomar, there's not even any people in Wildomar. And he said, no, that's the place to go. And so I trusted him. I've learned a long time before I started the church to trust older people, and it'd be good for some young people if they trusted older people. I learned to trust the older preachers, and learned to trust I was here in our town as a result of my college president, my pastor in Indiana, and at their direction I came here, and I'm so thankful. But so we went to Wildomar. There's only one building in the whole city of Wildomar was the post office. Really, two buildings. The post office is about 20 feet by 30 feet, and then there was the Wildomar School, an elementary school, and they had an auditorium that'd seat a few hundred. And long story short, I got permission finally to use the auditorium at the Wildomar School, made a flyer, and I mean rub-on letters and a typewriter that hardly worked, and took it down to a printer in Temecula, and they were Christians, and they were excited. Thought it was great. I was starting a church, and I printed. They weren't so excited that they didn't make me pay for the printing, but I printed the letters, and for 6 weeks, then we knocked on doors. And often my wife was with me. She'd be across the street. She knocked on doors with me for a little bit. She said, I'm not doing anything, just stand here with you. I'll go across the street. And so we'd knock on doors together. And we spent 6 weeks knocking on doors, knocked on every door that we get to in Wildomar and in much of Elsinore. And then mornings I would work. And I did some landscaping and just odds and jobs when we were out. Someone would say, how are you paying the bills, or what are you doing for support? I've not had anybody ask me that in 40 years. But I told them we're starting a church, and I had people offer me jobs, everything from landscaping to mechanic work to painting a house. I remember I spent 3 days painting a mobile home that was a wood-sided mobile home, a low profile, so I could reach all the way to the eaves. And it took me 3 days to paint it, and I gave the guy a bid what I thought it would cost. And by the time I was done, and he paid me, I think I made $2.50 in 3 days of work. I was not a good business deal there, but God took care of us, and He blessed us. And one job after another, here and there, and met a man who'd been a member of a good soul winning church. Some of the folks might remember years and years ago, Ray Badema. He had a great church, Central Baptist in Pomona, and he was a soul winner from that church, this gentleman, Don Erkes, and he was a truck driver that retired. And he said, I'll go soul winning with you, preacher. And this is during those 6 weeks I was knocking on doors. And Don Erkes went out with me often, and we knocked on doors. And Don was a rough old truck driver. If somebody wouldn't listen to us, he'd tell them what he thought, sometimes to my grief. But anyway, so we got all the way to that first Sunday, and I took a trip in my car and picked up a husband and wife and a couple of kids, dropped them off, went back and got a man and his girlfriend, and then swung by another house and got a boy, I don't know, a 10-year-old boy and twin little sisters, and said the 5 of them in the car, brought them to church, and that was our first Sunday. And so I brought myself 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I guess I brought 12 myself in 3 trips in my old beat-up car, and God blessed. And my wife did a junior church that day. I think she had 5th grade and under in a junior church, and I had 6th grade and up in the auditorium, and 53 or 63 people, I always forget which, and had 9 people get saved that morning. And 40 years later, I can tell you, my wife and I still go out soul winning, and we still teach Sunday school. We still believe preaching the gospel's right. We still believe holiness is right. And there's always been some adversaries, but what a good God, what a faithful God we serve. I want to read a verse here in Psalms chapter 16, and just a simple statement here that David made, and Psalm chapter 16, and in verse 6, he says, "The lines are fallen to me in pleasant places. Yea, I have a goodly heritage." 2 simple statements. Number 1, I have a goodly heritage. My pastor in Northern California just went to heaven recently, Pastor Blue, godly man, taught and trained and loved us. And and then our pastor in Indiana, Dr. Jack Hiles, our college president, Wendell Evans, and teachers there at Hiles-Anderson College that taught us. We owe so much to them, and wonderful church members who invested in the college and the bus ministry so that we could have a place to be trained in. And I realize there's a lot of unsung heroes, a lot of people that no one knows their name that helped in allowing us to be trained. The lines are falling to me in pleasant places. Yeah, I have a goodly heritage. My background, I've got great parents, and my dad in heaven, and my mom's still a part of our church. And I'm so thankful for my parents. I'm thankful for my two pastors I had. And I didn't get saved till I was out of high school, so I only had a couple of pastors before I started the church. But those two stayed my pastor. Those two men stayed men that I looked up to and loved. And great people God put in my life. And then over the years, the lines are falling to me the lines are falling to me in pleasant places. Yeah, I have a goodly heritage. Those pleasant places, but a goodly heritage over these last 40 years. The wonderful people God's put by my side here in our church, and people I've met just some for a very short time. Some just God brought it to our church for a little while, then they moved, and yet a lot of them friendships and love and encouragement. Some people on our staff and deacons and Sunday school teachers, how very, very dear people are to me as I look back at the great memories. And we'll talk about some of those in these next mornings. But then he says, the lines are falling to me in pleasant places. You know, God has a path, and always there's some difficulty. And yes, there's some sickness, and yes, there's some heartache. But the path God laid out for me, how good God has been to me and to my wife and to our children here today. Our youngest heading out officially. He's actually been on deputation a little bit, had a handful of meetings. He was kind of waiting till their baby was born. And 2-month-old Mary Ann, and so they're out for a lengthy period of time. But how good God's been. My son is our youth director and assistant pastor. My one daughter and her husband, they work on our staff. My other daughter, her husband's assistant pastor back in the Midwest, and we're just blessed. But we're blessed with friends, and we're blessed with God's mercy and how good He's been to us. And I want to encourage you. If you want to go back to Psalm 1, I've rattled on too long, but Psalms 1, blessed is the man, blessed. I took that chapter, Psalms 1, as my life's challenge, I guess you'd say, in starting the church. Don't walk in the counsel of the ungodly. I'm not going to get advice from a bunch of ungodly people. Don't stand in the way of sinners. Don't sit in the seat of the scornful. There's some things to stay away from if you want to be blessed. And then delight in the law of the Lord, and in His law we meditate day and night. Those 5 things, those are the key to getting that umbrella of blessing. Could I challenge you today? Seek the blessing of God on your life. He's a good God. He's not a liar. And what He said in Psalms 1, He meant. And He'll do that, and He will bless you. And this Psalm 16:6, I can just say, God's been good. God has been good. I hope you have a great day. Hey, 3:30, our Bible study. We're going to be studying the Davidic covenant. And we went through from Adam to Noah to Moses, and then to Abraham. Abraham got a promise for land. Moses gave us a promise, gave them the promise of a law to rule the land. And now David's going to have the promise of a son that'll sit on that throne, rule over the land one day. Again, he'll be on that throne. And what a great future we've got. And 3:30, our Bible study. Then again tonight at 7 o'clock, our Bible study at church. Hope you get to join us. And God bless you. Have a great day. Let's witness, pass out tracts, and I hope you have a wonderful day.